Hello, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connect. Each of us has stories that help us to understand and to explain our world. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who have had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who have had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories that help us to better understand our world. And they help us to connect with each other. And Community Connections is about those people and about their stories. And I'm sure that you will enjoy meeting these amazing, amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and I am so pleased to have Bo Long and her daughter Lisa as today's guests. They are wonderful Canadians who are teaching us about the history of our province and our country. They are residents of South Surrey White Rock, and they're working this summer as hosts in one of BC's most historic places, Barkerville. Welcome, Bo and Lisa. So delightful to have you on Community Connections.
Hi neighbors, welcome to Barkerville. My name is Lisa, and this summer I'm with my mom, and we're so grateful to have the opportunity to interpret at Barkerville. So after a short hike, you can arrive at this viewpoint that allows you to really see Barkerville in its entirety from another angle. And just imagine the miners that roam on the road here and how people lived more than 100 years ago. So here we are walking on the main street of Barkerville. You can see that there are buildings and businesses on the side. Barkerville was an international town. It had people coming from everywhere, and people display their country's flag on the houses. And you see here there's an English flag, the French flag, the Swiss flag, the American flag. Really, it was really international. And later on, we will lead you to the Chinatown area where most of the Chinese lived. So now we are entering the Chinatown. We're almost entering the Chinatown area. Normally there is the culture center hosts Chinese lessons and some of the culture classes, but this year because of COVID, it's less interactive. Let's enter Chinatown. I want to especially bring your attention to this building. It's the Qigong Tang. Qigong Tang is the Chinese community building, and in here they established the Chinese Benevolent Society, and the Hongmen, which is the Chinese Freemasons, gather their meetings here as well. So in addition to sharing this space with the community, it also acted as a hostel for new arrivals and cafeteria for the newly arrived Chinese. So it really acted as the home away from home for these Chinese that endured such a long journey. Here we have a plaque. Well, this building in 2017 became a National Historic Site.
Talk a little bit about your lives and coming to Canada and what's happened along the way, and then we can talk about and maybe get a tour of Barkerville.
Oh, yes. I can begin first. So we immigrated, my family immigrated to Canada in 2005, and our first stop was in East Vancouver, and in there we lived for 4 years before coming to White Rock in South Surrey. So basically when we came here, we were in grade 4, beginning of grade 4, up until grade 7. So we really spent our elementary school years in East Van. We switched 5 or 6 elementary schools in 3 years, but then once we arrived in South Surrey, Semiahmoo was our first secondary school in Canada, but also the first school ever that we stayed for the entire 5 years duration.
And we're wonderful and so pleased you did. and a part of our
Yeah.
community. Thank you.
It was a lovely school.
Yeah. And Bo, your decision to come to Canada with your children, and
Yeah,
was that an easy decision, or was that a challenging decision, or must have been
yeah,
difficult to leave family and come to a different country?
yeah. When we're immigration to Canada, the life is changed, and I wish to like a lot of Chinese family. I live in immigration to Canada with 2 kids. They grew up at Canada. I'm so glad. The first time I'm so sad because I miss my country, hometown, and miss my family, big family. But right now, back to sea, after 50 years, I think I'm so glad the kids, my 2 kids, grew up in Canada because they have a lot of people. Canadian people is so nice to helpful. Yeah.
And you must be very proud of the two of them. They're wonderful contributions, and I'm sure they're very proud of you and Max as well for the life that you've given them and the chances they've had.
Yeah.
Lisa, tell us a little bit about working with some of the work you did with United Nations and the work in France. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've accidentally tripped upon the opportunity to work in UNESCO headquarters in Paris. I studied tourism, so I was at that time I was working in the education sector, so education was a whole new field for me. But through this work experience, I really learned a lot about sustainability and education, empowering young people, and just basically planting the seed to allow them to have the opportunity to grow and ensure that our next generation focuses on sustainability. So after that, really, that took a 180 switch on my career. Before I was very focused on private sector, but now I feel like private sector, the foundation is very solid. It's very goal-oriented and result-driven. But then how about using that and then switch to on a more sustainable scale? Yeah. So now I'm currently working with the Canadian Commission for UNESCO on a toolkit to drive sustainability, especially in the tourism industry.
So what are the challenges you face in terms of pushing UNESCO and pushing Canadians and pushing people worldwide to understand about sustainability and how important our environment is within that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think on a global scale, right, people are quite skeptical about sustainability, the concept itself still. But then you look at specific region-wise, you realize that some regions are more prone to understand and accept sustainability because they are more, the lifestyle, they're able to have more spending power, whereas others, more poverty-driven and countries or regions, they're less prone for these types of aspect because they don't have the resources or the monetary background to support them in this kind of sort of lifestyle or knowledge.
So I think we have to look at where we've come from as a country, and certainly you're contributing to our understanding of the history and that historic place that you're in for the summer and in Barkerville. And it must be really interesting for you to look at the history of a province which isn't very old compared to world standards, and look at where we've come from and being able to go there and bring your wonderful experiences from other parts of the world to look at and to help us understand as we grow. Talk to me a little bit about the people that come to visit Barkerville and your experiences with them and how they see Barkerville and how they see their understanding of the world as it grows out of the history of British Columbia and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm. When I first get the job, I didn't know many about the Barkerville. But when I working at there, I do some research, and I'm so exciting. Barkerville is the first country, first city in the Chinatown is the first city in Canada. The people coming is 150 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really incredible for us to compare our immigration stories with, you know, those that we learn about, those that come here. So, for example, the reason that they came was very different from our immigration, you know, story, and how they were treated as well, and their attention and the way that the kids were growing up. So all these aspects was really fascinating for us to learn about, and really not only see the growth of Canada, how much Canada, the inclusion, how inclusive people are, but also, you know, of just the culturally, how people are very different now. But there are certainly like many visitors that came here that didn't know much like how we were about Barkerville, especially of the Chinese tradition. So actually during the peak of the gold rush, half of the population in Barkerville were Chinese. And many people were shocked to learn that that made up about 3,000 in population. So that was always one of the first things we tell our visitors. It's about the significance of the Chinese culture and the population here in Barkerville.
At one point, Barkerville was one of the largest, if not the largest, city or town in British Columbia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And certainly,
I studied in 1884. That is the north of the biggest city in north of San Francisco.
yeah, that's right. And I guess when the gold rush in California folded, then that's when British Columbia came to life. And so many of the citizens from San Francisco came up into Canada, and the epicenter for all of that was Barkerville for the gold rush.
Yeah, exactly.
And how many visitors would you get in Barkerville over the course of a summer?
Every day, every time the Barkerville, inside the Barkerville, we just have 2
This year is different because of COVID. But usually I've read statistics that we have around 3,000 per day coming here, versus this year is around 200 at a time. Wow. We're not sure how many come during the course of the day, but yeah, many families, we have families that come here every summer with their family and kids. Some others, when we ask them if their first time, they say no, when they were very young, they came. And it's really cool to learn about, their perspective about the town, when they were really young.
So I've visited a number of times to Barkerville, and a connection you may not know is Judge Begbie, who was famous in Barkerville and held court there for about 10 years. The person who played Judge Begbie was from White Rock, and he was White Rock Players Club. His name was Franklin Johnson, and he was one of the founders of the White Rock Amateur Players Club. And every summer he would go up and play Judge Begbie, and we were so proud to have him in Barkerville for the summers and doing that. And so maybe you could pass that along to some of them. I'm sure they may know that. And I think Judge Begbie was known as the hanging judge.
Yes.
Or whatever it is. So that's a personal connection with our community, because he was a well-known actor from our community who got to go there every summer for at least 10 years. So what are the things that you've learned most about from the visitors that come there? What are the things they seem to be most interested in, and what have you learned from them about their questions and about their understanding of Barkerville, of British Columbia, and of Canada?
Mhm. Well, because we're situated in the Chinatown region, many of the visitors, they are unaware of many of the Chinese culture. So we in the culture center, we actually operate a tea house. So we explain to our guests about the tea culture. But I think what we both found is that people are very sympathetic. The visitors, they are very aware of the how the Chinese people were being discriminated against, especially of the period of the railway.
Yeah.
So then we explained to them before railway they were actually working here, and because of Barkerville, many of the workers were directed to work in a railway. So it's really interesting to make that connection with them, but also to hear about their understanding that the Chinese population were actually being discriminated against, and that they're really empathetic towards our people and our culture as well. Yes.
So that's a
Do you have?
very, very informative, and for Canadians, for all of us to understand that, and with the Indigenous people and some of the things they've gone through in that area as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think I read somewhere that Judge Begbie had made some changes in that area, and I think that he had talked about ensure that, I believe it was the Chinese that were being discriminated against in terms of their taxation or something, and he changed that and made it more equitable. And with First Nations, that he actually learned a number of the languages of the First Nations people and made them feel more engaged and a part of it. So that's in many cases one of the areas that we can look at and hold up as an example in some both positive and negative ways of how Canada is. We're all multicultural in Canada. We're all from all over the world. And sometimes people forget that. And I think it's so important to remember that. Do you see much of that as you're meeting with people and talking with them as they come through the community?
Yeah, for sure. Uh, I mean, in Barkerville, if you walk through the town, you will see that all the flags from different countries. So, nowadays it's very, we are all act as a one big family, and also in our community as well. In White Rock and South Surrey, people are very acceptive. I think this is the quality of all Canadians. We're all very acceptive, and we're very curious about people's culture. Um, yeah, just across from us, the tea room that we operate is a Chinese restaurant. So this is a very interesting spot for them. Many of the people from Prince George even drive to Barkerville just to have the Chinese food, and yeah, they're very curious about and acceptive of the culture.
That's yeah. Sorry, Bo.
And the big change is in that time, the the Chinese family that didn't have the money to send a girl to Barkerville, so the men are always single, and the men can't marry to the Western ladies. Yeah, but right now is anything is changed. Yeah, and the Qigong Town is right now is the the Canada.
It's a national heritage site. Yeah, it's the only building in Barkerville that's has the national heritage status.
Designation. Isn't that wonderful? And so, are you able to take us out for a brief tour of the Chinese section of Barkerville? Is that possible?
We can try and see. Yeah. To the Chinatown. Yeah, let's go.
You're our tour guide, Bo. Tell us what you're doing.
We're tour guide. We did this before in the video, but let's bring you to see. Okay, so this is the. Do you want a tour? Okay. We are section of the European section. gotta walk until Chinatown still.
We lost connection there a little bit. I don't know whether it's picking up the Wi-Fi or not.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay now.
So here is still the western part. We have
There is a church.
the Anglican Church here. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah, looks great.
Does it still look the same as when you visited?
Probably my memory's failing me more than the buildings are.
Yeah, so here you see many buildings have been lifted up because every year there's storms. Every year we get around 7 to 9 meters of snow. So then when the snow melts, they actually carry a lot of gravel and sand down here. And throughout the years, Barkerville will actually raise bit by bit. So the actual Barkerville is actually 2 meters below us.
Wow. And do they still have a place where you can pan for gold?
So this year, due to COVID, it's actually closed. But in the previous years, there's the El Dorado in the entrance of the Barkerville that you're allowed to pan for gold just for fun.
I remember doing that for fun.
Yeah. Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have here St. George hotels, saloons. Okay. Is our time still okay?
Yep, we've got another 5 minutes or so. Sure.
Let me rush.
Where's your mom hiding?
She's there.
Catching up to you. Where do you live while you're there?
We live in a staff camp that is similar to the portables. So it's fully has electricity and running water. So it's as if a actual dormitory. Yes.
How many people live there over the course of the summer and work at Barkerville?
Yeah. So it's only open during. There are 28 rooms. There's a nearby town that's called Wells. And most of the long-term or more seasonal workers, they have house rentals there.
So how many people would work at Barkerville over a summer?
Including the interpreters, it's around 40.
Yeah.
So including administration and the interpreters is around 40. Okay, we're almost there.
It's getting a good workout for you.
Yeah, you can see the dome. Let me run.
Looks like it's a pretty nice day there too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day, which doesn't happen quite often. Okay, welcome to Caribou. 欢迎来到加里布. And so upon entering, you will see a plaque. This is made in May 2015. It's by the Premier Christy Clark. She did an official apology for the hardship of suffering of the Chinese people in British Columbia. So this is a plaque in front of where we enter today's Barkerville Chinatown. Even though at that time the Chinese and the Westerners weren't enforced to stay apart, but because of the discrimination, they decided to have their own business on their side of the town. So this is a tea house. Show you from. This is where we are normally. We transform a building into a tea house, and you will see here, this is the Long Duck Tong, is one of the well-known Chinese restaurants in Barkerville, and there are various buildings here, including the Zhigong Tong. Okay, so here we are.
Welcome to our Chinatown, the tea house.
Yes, so here, this is where we are stationed at. We have a tea set on the table. Do you want to guide, Gordy?
Yeah, because the tea, welcome to our tea house. The tea is so important in Chinese community. Chinese community drink tea everywhere, every time. And we have the high tea culture. The tea house, this tea house is not people just thirsty to come in. They come in like a social area. We can service tea and the tea set and drawing the picture, or we can do some the calligraphy, Chinese calligraphy.
Yeah.
So yeah, tea surrounds our literary, our literature, our arts, our music, and it's a great social place for the Chinese to be surrounded by, similar to your days' saloon. Yes.
So all cultures have some way of connecting, both socially and sharing their culture and their beliefs and connecting with each other. And it's so nice to see that this one and how we connect across cultures now, which is becoming so important in our new world.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And this is a painting I've been working on. It's of one of the most significant building in Barkerville. This is the Zhigong Tang, which is the Chinese Freemasons. They gathered here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll show you the street view later.
Is that a painting that you're doing?
Yeah, it's an oil painting.
Wow, it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful.
It's still work in progress. Still work in progress.
Do you get that skill from Bo? From your mom?
Yes, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, and my mom wrote this. This is one of the poems in Chinese that she found really reflective of probably the Chinese miners' feeling, because it sends nostalgic feeling. It translated basically into, when I left home, my hometown, I was really young, but when I returned back, things were very different. And when I see kids running around, I'm afraid of telling them where I'm from, because that might scare them.
Yeah.
She's been writing that. It's a well-known poem in Chinese. She's writing that because she thought it really signifies the nostalgic feeling of the Chinese. And this is some calligraphy she's writing. She painted on. Yeah. And of the Zhigong Tang, I'll show you one quickly. This is very significant. So here we are.
Yeah.
It's Zhigong Tang. So the Hongmen Society, the Chinese Freemasons, they used to gather here. So it was a secret society during the Qing Dynasty until 1911. But it also acted as a similar to today's community hall. So all the newly arrived Chinese, they would be introduced to here to meet the locals, but also it acted as the Chinese judicial system. So Chinese and the Westerners actually have different judicial systems, except for murder cases. So all the Chinese, law and order were taken care of in-house, in their own house, whereas the Westerners had their own courthouse. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's very interesting to learn about the history and of the, just being here, being in the actual land of where how the Chinese, the beginning of the Chinese coming here. Yeah. Especially the miners who came from who come from China were also from Guangdong province, which is where we came from. All of them were from the Guangdong province, so we do feel a very significant ties. My mom was telling me growing up, she also always heard about people coming to Gold Mountain. They always said, "Oh, would you like to go to Gold Mountain to become rich?" So, just being young and hearing these things, even I heard some of these stories. Would you like to get gold? I always was curious about why did they say that. Until I come here, it felt really surreal to be in this place and being surrounded by these beautiful artifacts and history.
And it's so nice to see the connections that all of our cultures have and how that comes together in places like Barkerville, as you're talking about the experiences that you've had and how they're reflected in this community and hopefully reflected in the values of Canadians in Canada. And certainly the contributions that you make, that the Chinese make, and have so many cultures have made, I think is what makes Canada one of the better places in the world to live. And we're very fortunate in that sense, and fortunate to have you here reflecting that and being able to talk about your experiences and putting that context in place for us all to understand, as we all should be doing, and understanding that wherever we come from, we're so similar in the things we care about and the traditions we have.
Exactly. Yes.
So are there a couple of special things that either of you can talk about that this experience of being at Barkerville has meant for you over the course of the summer, and messages that you'd like to pass on to all the rest of us, and so that we can learn from the things that you've experienced and learned from?
I think at Barkerville, I learned about before the community is Chinese. In Chinese community, we help each other. But right now, anything is changed. The Chinese people can, in the community, everybody can help each other. So their kids is so lucky, we moved to the new country, and the kids can grow up fast and join the communities fast. So thankful.
Oh, well said. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's really about building this community tie, right? But reflecting back, the community was what brought all the Chinese together. It's what formulated such a monumental building here. It's what formulated today the Canadian, how our culture is built upon. Small communities, small tied communities that brought us all together. And then, as you said before, the understanding and being, accepting of other cultures, even though before it didn't translate as much, but nowadays it's very great for us to learn that they're all very accepting and all very understanding of different cultures and want to be immersive in these different cultures.
And we can learn so much about ourselves by recognizing and learning from other cultures. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.